Hello and welcome to the Terrace Scottish Football Podcast. My name is Craig Gordon Telfer and this is the third and final podcast where we take a deep dive into the lower leagues with an actual football player. In the words of the Legion of Doom, what a rush. We have covered League 2 with Danny Denham and we've covered League 1 with Rico Kitongo, and I appreciate the positive feedback we've received so far, but this time around we are joined by one of the biggest names in the business. He has played all over the world. He's won trophies in China and Australia. He's won the Scottish Cup with Heart of Midlothian and he's represented his country at a World Cup, but surely this is the high point of his career to date. Talking me through this season's championship is Livingston centre-back Ryan McGowan. Ryan, thank you so very much for joining me.
Thank you for that welcoming. I think that's the best welcoming I've ever had.
We'll kick things off by just having a wee look at the championship in general. You know, in previous seasons, we've had a big team like a Heart of Midlothian, Kilmarnock or Dundee United. This season, certainly on paper, in terms of status maybe, there's not that much between the sides. There's no massive club. What have you made of the division on the whole this season?
I've really enjoyed it. Yeah, like you said, I think at the start of the season is probably one of the only leagues, well, definitely in Scotland, but possibly, you know, in a lot of nations where there was probably realistically 5, maybe 6 teams who believed at the start of the season, or their fans believed that, you know, if we go on a good run here, we have a chance of winning this league. There's a lot of, I don't want to say sleeping giants as such, but there's a lot of clubs in the championship that, you know, when the going gets good and that, you know, they do have a strong following amongst them, and I've thoroughly enjoyed it. You know, it's been a bit different for me in terms of, you know, playing in these against these teams that I've not really played with since I was back in my United days, really, which was a long 2008, I think it was. Showing my age here a little bit, but yeah, I've just thoroughly enjoyed it. I think there's a lot of really good players within the league, a lot of good young managers, and like I said, a lot of big clubs that, you know, I hope that, you know, Falkirk, for example, if they go up, that they can, you know, really showcase how good the championship is and make a mark in the Premier League. And yeah, fingers crossed we can join them as well.
Brilliant. Yeah, we'll start, Ryan, then by looking at the game on Tuesday night between Livingston and Falkirk at Almonville. Finished 1-0 to Livy, courtesy of a very late header from Andrew Shinney. How was the match for you?
I think similar to all the games that we've played against them this season. I don't think there's been much between the teams. You know, I think it's only been a 0-0 draw. We won 1-0. Teddy Yengi scored a really good goal. We beat them 2-1 there. And then 1-0 again. So that there's not been much between the teams. You know, you could flip it. You know, if those games were played again, it could possibly be 4 draws. We could have lost a couple. You know, I just think that we've maybe had not the marker on them, but I feel like they struggle a little bit to play against us. You know, I feel like we're a really good team off the ball in terms of our pressing and sort of pressure that we can get on them when they're maybe playing out from the back or coming through the midfield. I think we're probably one of the best in the league at doing that. And I think, you know, after maybe the first 2 games, they kind of worked that out as well, and that they've then maybe tried to not spook us, I guess, but change it up a little bit. And I think that's what you kind of seen on Tuesday night. They went a little bit more direct. They just try to sort of skip that press and see if they could sort of catch us on the hop, but we're also relatively good at handling that as well. So, yeah, like I said, there's not been much between the 2 teams when we've played, but they've had more consistency throughout the season and performed better week in, week out, which is why they're the top of the league and have that little bit of advantage over the rest of us.
Yeah, I was at the match and I thought the best players in the park, I thought Jerome Pryor and yourself and Danny Wilson, just really strong performances. And as you said, thought you kept Ross McKeever pretty quiet. I don't think he was able to really influence the match in the way they would have wanted. What did you make of your own performance on Tuesday?
Yeah, I thought I played well, kept the clean sheet, and we won the game, which is pretty good. Yeah, we knew we were going to be in a difficult game. You know, they're one of the teams, or one of many teams, that carry a lot of goal threats throughout them. You know, you just look at Scotty Arfield, for example, who've come in and scored 5 or 6 goals. McKeever's good. Young Barney Stewart, who I think is going to be a good signing in a couple of years once he gets up to that sort of speed. And then they've got their winger players, you know, players out wide that have a trick and can get balls in the box and then yeah, like I said, the midfield is Spencer. I think is a very, very good player, along with Henderson, strong back four. So we knew that we had to be on top of our game. Especially me and Danny at the back. We knew we'd be under probably more pressure than we are maybe week in, week out. And we're also coming off the back of a 3-3 draw with Airdrie, where we defensively we were poor. So we knew that we had to make big improvements on that performance, and yeah, we're just glad that we won the game, obviously, and puts a little bit of pressure on Falkirk, although I think they still hold all the aces. But yeah, it just keeps it a little bit more interesting for the next couple of weeks. And from a sort of Livingston perspective, if we can't finish first, then we need to make sure that we finish second. And those 3 points were massive in terms of kind of moving away from Ayr United.
And from reading a lot of comments online, Falkirk supporters, they seem really keen to point out that Livingston play anti-football. It's the antithesis to their really florid attacking style of play. They've got a habit of dragging teams down to their level. How do you respond to that?
I think it's just that's footballing nature, isn't it? That when you get beat, you're always trying to look for a bit of a why did we get beat? I remember the first game at their ground. There was a little bit of that going on in terms of, but I also think if you're just watching us for the first time, Chris Montano, good friend of mine, but he is very soft in the challenges, and he will stay down for 5 or 6 minutes when he gets tackled, and he always thinks he's going to go off. And I wouldn't say it's the dark arts as such, but we are one or a team that, don't want to say experienced as such, but because we are pressing high and we are trying to win the ball, you're not constantly going to do that. So sometimes when they do skip past you, it's easier just to pull them back or give away a foul, I guess. And I think that probably frustrates them a little bit more. But then I think it was the third game we played against them. I think it was John McGlynn afterwards, or someone said afterwards that they should have we were on a counter attack and they had a chance to bring, I think it was Stevie May possibly, which led to the penalty. And, possibly a foul then in the middle of the pitch stops that penalty or opportunity. So I just think that sometimes we're a little bit more switched on, in terms of making sure that we sort of stop it at source. And I wouldn't say that we're anti-football or anti-this, but it is funny some of the stuff that you do read on Twitter. But I'm not sure why they're getting so worked up about it. They're sitting top of the league. They've performed, like I said earlier, they've been the best team in the league so far for their consistency and their goals scored. It's just one of those things that we seem to have their number at the moment, but would much rather be in their shoes than ours.
I remember there was a bit towards the end of the game. I think you had cleared the ball and you'd gone down for a bit. The referee brought the game back, and those Falkirk fans, they were coming over to the wall and sort of like, I could see them sort of like pointing and shouting at you. And I was thinking, I bet he's got a big grin on his face. I bet he's really enjoying it.
I just remember them saying, "You played fantastic today, mate. You're such a good player. We wish you signed for Falkirk." Oh, that's the only parts I can remember. Yeah, just saying, excellent recovery run. You've done really well there. Hope you're okay. Hope it's not a sore one. But yeah, again, that was, I think it was Big Barney Stewart running down the line. That kind of, I'm not going to go anywhere. I am only going to kick the ball out. So yeah, he was just trying to obviously stop me from doing that and caught me a little bit late. And I was lucky to get up and walk away from that one.
Where I was sitting in the stand, there was a fan behind me, fancied himself as a bit of a comedian. And I know I've got a bit of cheek saying that I'm coming on this podcast and trying to act smart and being funny, but fancied himself as a bit of a comedian. Very sarcastic with the comments he was making throughout the match in terms of how Livingston were playing Martindale's substitutions. And he was really unhappy when Robbie Muirhead was taken off. And especially unhappy when the free kick was awarded, because obviously you remember Robbie Muirhead scored that fantastic goal against Ayr United, saying stuff like, "Oh, that's brilliant, Martindale, taking off our best goal threat. Yeah, brilliant management, amazing." Stephen Kelly spots the ball, hits the crossbar, and there's Andrew Shinney to head it over the line. Again, what would you respond to comments? I mean, the guy was at it all night. It was I found it quite difficult to listen to. So you've got to play in front of that all season.
I think that's just fans, isn't it? I sometimes think fans just go there and get a lot of their frustration out from the working week. lets them kind of unload, I guess, in a social environment and sort of get sort of all their frustrations out that they possibly have throughout the week. But I think everybody in the stadium would have preferred, or would have maybe liked to have that option of Robbie Muirhead to take the free kick. But we are such an anti-football team that we do have some players that can play football. And in terms of Stephen Kelly, and yeah, it was a wonderful free kick. And then our huge, massive striker in Andrew Shinnie, who's technically terrible, was there to header it in. So yeah, like I said, it was a good way to sort of win that game.
Mm-hmm.
You were there. There wasn't much between the teams. There wasn't many great chances, and it was always kind of going to be a game that if you scored first or one goal probably won it. So we were delighted to get it right at the end, and it sort of leads on for a big couple of weeks in terms of the Trust Trophy final on Sunday, and then sort of the last 6 or 7 games of the season.
We'll come on and preview the Trust Trophy final just shortly when we touch on Queen's Park. But as you mentioned there, Ryan, there's an 8-point gap between yourselves and Falkirk at the top of the table, albeit Falkirk have played a game Falkirk have played a game more than you. Do you still believe Livingston can win the title? And if so, what do you need to do to overtake Falkirk?
I don't want it to sound like cliches, but we just need to make sure that we win all of our games. The reason that Falkirk are in the position that they're in is because they're more consistent throughout the season. That's why they're top of the league, and the league doesn't lie. We've not been consistent enough. We've probably drawn too many games. Off the top of my head, we've only lost maybe a couple of games, but yeah, we've sort of dropped points where we as a playing group and as a staff feel like we shouldn't have dropped points. So we need to just make sure that we go out and win all of those games. Come the end of the season, if Falkirk can go on and win the league, then fair play. They've been the best team this season. But if we go and win our remaining games, then we will finish second. And that's what you want to do. If you can't win it, you want to finish second, especially with the way the playoffs is. It is quite tricky if you finish third or fourth to eventually try and get promoted with just the way that the playoff system kind of works. So you need to give your best opportunity to be promoted, which is what we want to do. So to do that, we need to win all of those 6 games that are remaining. And then, hopefully, from our point of view, Falkirk can slip up or someone can do us a favour and we go up automatically, or it gives us our best chance to go up through the playoffs.
What's Livingston like as a club to play for?
I've really enjoyed it. My career, I've not played for many clubs, so it's good to experience something a little bit different. But no, it's a really good family-orientated club. I think all the staff, the background staff, the ladies at the front desk, the chef, the sort of grounds people that work around the club, everyone's been there for a long time and fully invested in the club, and you can kind of feel that, similar to sort of, not Hearts as such when I was there, but you just had that feeling that, people have been there for 10, 15, 20 years. They have the stories, they have the players, they kind of see players growing up, like Scott Pittman's been there for, 10, 15 years. They remember when he first walked in, they remember, sort of big characters that kind of tornadoed into the stadium and for 6 months and then left. You love hearing those stories in and around the changing room and at lunch. So it's, it's been fantastic experience for me so far. And little things like getting promoted or winning the trophy on Sunday, they're the kind of games that you want to be involved in, because that's stuff that those people remember. The staff members would remember the night out, or the feeling that we hopefully give them at the end of the season if we get promoted. So it's just a really good club, really good setup, real good feel factor about them, and thoroughly enjoying it.
And what's David Martindale like to play under? Because it feels like when I look at Livingston, there's no other team in the SPFL that seem to be completely moulded by one person the way that Livingston have been by David Martindale.
He's so calm and collected on the side of the pitch that he's fully invested in it. And I think if you speak to him for 2 minutes or 20 minutes, you can see that, the club means so much to him. He's done so much for the club, in terms of little things like setting up darts and improving the gym. There's been many a recovery day where we've seen him cutting wood and putting down the flooring while we've been doing a recovery, and building protein stations because he wasn't happy with the way that the protein was getting set up, and built the ice baths. There's a lot of stuff that you're like, he's heavily invested in it. He's putting his time and effort into it. The least we can do is do that. So and again, I'm probably similar to you. Before joining the club, you kind of see him on the sidelines, or you see him and you think he's real, not old school as such, but he's working week. He goes through a lot of video. He has a lot of tactical setup. We do a lot of patterns of play. I think if you watched us over the years, you wouldn't say, or over this season, sorry, you wouldn't really say that we're a long ball team, or we do play out from the back, but we also have a squad where we can mix it up a little bit. We've got our midfield three at some points is Macaulay Tate, Scott Pittman, and Stephen Kelly. You'd hardly say that they're big cloggers that are gonna scrap about, and and then even to a certain extent, me and Danny Wilson are not the sort of renowned, angry, aggressive centre half. So it's sometimes possibly a bit lazy for people to call us that, but we do play football. We try to, but we also have that other side where we can mix it up a little bit, and I think that's why we have been relatively successful this season is because we can, depending on what the teams do, if they're pressing us high, we do have that chance to sort of flip it up to our front three, but at the same time, if we can build the game, and I've just really enjoyed the season so far.
We'll come on and talk about Falkirk, Ryan, in a wee bit more detail, but I'm really interested to know about what's the differences between playing in the Premiership and playing in the Championship. I mean, from the outside looking, it just looks like the game's a bit faster, there's a bit more technical quality, you're punished for mistakes you make, but having played last season in the Premiership with St Johnstone and this season in the Championship with Livingston, how would you compare the two?
It's a good question. I think obviously the Premiership, you've done this before. I think that the Premiership, obviously, you just have that higher quality of player. Obviously against the sort of the bigger clubs, you have them, on the bigger money and the bigger transfer fees. But I feel like this, especially this season in the Championship, it's been really good because I think anyone on their day, for example, last week against Airdrie, they're bottom by maybe 6 or 7 points. I think if anyone was watching that game, you'd be thinking, well, these are two good teams. They, it was 3-3. Both teams scored some pretty good goals defensively. Both could have been better, but there wasn't whatever gap it was in terms of the sort of league table shows difference between the two teams. Whereas I think in the Premier League, there is that big gap where you can just kind of tell if you were just dropped from the moon and you're seeing Celtic against St Johnstone, you'd be like, that's the top team, and that's one that's struggling down the bottom. So, but again, finances come into that. There's a lot of other different things and sources. But yeah, I just feel like, especially this season in the Championship, that every team that we've played against is probably going into that game thinking we could definitely win this if we play our best. And I think, especially playing in the Premier League, just for St Johnstone, for example, there was probably a lot of games where we were like, we need to play our best and hope the other team isn't at their best. They have to be off it, depending on who you play. 80% if you're playing Celtic, for example, they need to have a really off day and you need to be bang at it to even get anything. Whereas I feel like in the Championship, there's that little bit less leeway. Almost every away game, they'll be thinking, for opposition possibly against us, Ayr and Falkirk, for example, they'll be thinking we need to be right at it. But if they're 10% off, we can get something from the game. And I think that's why I've really enjoyed it, because each game there's that kind of challenge of both teams trying to play football. We get it sometimes, conditions, pitches, it doesn't happen. But yeah, it's probably surprised me the amount of teams that try and play and try and, I hate saying play it the right way or what fans want to watch. Because,
I know what you mean.
But they're trying to do the right things and trying to get the result, whereas they're not just kind of sitting in for a draw or sitting in for a point, because I felt like, especially in the Premier League, points are golden. If you go away from home and you get a draw, everyone's delighted. Whereas here, I think even, there's been games at our stadium where it's been a draw, and the other players and oppositions were probably thinking, we had a really good chance of winning that, and probably coming away disappointed. Whereas in the Premier League, if you get a draw away from home, most of the bottom six would be pretty happy with that.
And as a player, Ryan, you've maximised the most of your ability. We were joking at the start, but you've represented Australia in the World Cup, which is an absolutely phenomenal achievement. And from what you've seen in the Championship level, you mentioned earlier there's some good players there. And what do you think the difference is then between how a player handles themselves in the Championship? And what I mean by that is like how they prepare for matches, how they look after themselves off the pitch. Is there a difference between how they do that in terms of the Championship to the Premiership?
No, I don't think so. I think maybe when I was coming through, there was probably a bit of a difference. For example, when I was at Ayr, they were part-time and they were in the Championship back then. So we had a lot of players that would miss Tuesday night because they were held back from work, for example. So that there's a lot more professionalism probably across Scotland than when I was first coming in, what was that, 15, 16, 17 years ago. There's more sports science, there's more video analysis, there's more, we probably do 3 or 4 sessions per week, which I think would be totally normal across all of the Championship teams. Again, very similar to the Premier League. Facilities and stadiums and things like that, there's not massive difference. There's a lot of clubs that are just doing the best they can with the resources that they have. But player-wise, there's definitely, you could probably think of 10, 12, 15 players who were given an opportunity and a platform to play in the Premier League. You wouldn't be like, oh, he's way out of his depth. There's so many good players that for one reason or another haven't made it at a Premier League club or haven't been consistent enough in the Premier League club, but they probably just need an opportunity and a chance and a manager who believes in them. But yeah, I've seen enough evidence from this season to know that it's a great market to go and sort of nitpick if you're one in the Premier League players, and again, it's the right player, right club. There is a lot of stuff that goes with it. Of course, yeah. There's enough good quality players that could make that step up without a problem.
And I think that the team who I fancy to win the division's Falkirk, and they're given they're in pole position. I think, as you mentioned earlier,
thanks, mate. It's been great. I'll leave you there.
But it's been a remarkable season for them, because I thought coming into this campaign, I thought they'd a shout of finishing in the top 4. They've completely exceeded my expectations, and I do think they'll be playing Premiership football next season. From what you've seen from them, Ryan, where do you think they would need to strengthen if they do go up to the top flight? What areas do you think they would need to improve in?
I think there's 2 ways of looking at it. I feel like they've done really well this season. Well, they're the best team so far this season. And a lot of that comes from the continuity of having that success last season. They've obviously got a really good manager in John McGlynn, who I've worked with previously, who is very into his videos and how he wants to play and a style of play. He's then went and got or invested in players who he believes can play in that style of play. And if you look at a lot of the players that Falkirk have got, they've got those players that, I don't want to say that were earmarked early on, but they had great potential and have maybe fallen off a little bit. And John's kind of scooped them in and given them a platform and given them an opportunity to go and express themselves, and now they're becoming the players that everybody thought they possibly would be 3 or 4 years ago.
Calvin Miller, Dylan Tate, Aidan Nesbitt, all guys who were highly rated coming through at youth level and have perhaps not quite met their potential.
Yeah, and I've been in that situation where you're 19, 20 and you're trying to break into the team and you play 2 good games, you play a bad game, manager needs a result, can't trust you, back out again, and you get an injury, you're out for a couple of months. Especially the way football is now, a new manager comes in every couple of months, different ideas, different players. It's so easy to get lost into that sort of wilderness and drop down the leagues as such. So, I think it's been great credit to John and Falkirk as a club that they've been able to sort of establish those players and get them to play for a style of football. I think making that step up, they're probably going to need to strengthen the squad. in terms of having sort of proper experienced players that are in there. If you're going to stay in the league, you need to score goals. So they probably need possibly a proven goal scorer or a rough diamond that is going to, no one's ever heard of, comes into the league and scores 7 to 10 goals, example. That kind of foreigner, the one that everyone gets excited with, no one has heard about him, and he rocks up and scores 3 in his first 4 games and then kind of fails away. And but yeah, I think they have to stay close to that team that's got him there, because if they hopefully they don't go up, but if they do go up first, they've done really well this season and they've got success playing the way they've played. But I also think, again, I've read some stuff. I don't think they've done particularly well against us and Ayr so far this season. I think there's maybe 1 win and a draw in 7 games. So you could maybe quote me on that. I don't think it's been great against us two, for example, but the rest of the league, they seem to have been able to handle that really well. So they'll probably just need to just strengthen. There's probably maybe 3 or 4 players, but I think with a lot, the players that they have at the club, they will have the potential to make that step up and be successful next year. What that success is, if that's staying in the league, for example, and being able to get the money that comes from and then build the second year, or if it's, we'll just see how we go. Knowing John, he'll probably be thinking there's no reason why we can't go on a bit of a run and try and sneak into the top 6 and see what happens from there.
Are you a bit surprised that Falkirk haven't been, I'll change the question there, because I spoke to a friend who's a Falkirk fan and I said that I was recording this podcast with you, and I said, is there anything you'd want to ask from a player's perspective? And he said, Ryan McGowan probably doesn't have anything really positive to say about how Falkirk play, given how the games between Falkirk and Livingston have gone this season. However, particularly at the start of the campaign, watching the television and watching highlights, I know that you don't necessarily get a full picture from the highlights, but they were absolutely superb in that first half of the campaign. What have you made of Falkirk generally in the league this season?
The hardest games we've played. They just have good players everywhere. They've got a really good system. If you're looking through their sort of goalkeeper to back 4, they've got good kind of experience or a good age group. I think Spencer's one of, if not one of the best centre midfielders in the league. I think that's, no one's really going to question that. Keeps them ticking over. Is just a really classy player. Like that. Then they've got Miller on one wing. They had Morrison. They had Miller, Morrison.
There's Ethan Ross, Alfie Aguiman.
Yes. So they had, I think, especially at the start of the season, they had those 2 that could, 2 of the 4. I think depending on who you ask as a Falkirk fan, they'd maybe have one that they like particularly, but the rest of the 3, they were able to take both of them off and bring 2 almost like for like replacements, which shows you the strength of squad that they have. Whereas that's possibly where other teams, if you're bringing off one of your better players, you're probably not replacing them with a similar style of player. And then they had McCaver up front, who was scoring goals. So, I think they were not fortunate enough with injuries, but they had a good solid run at it with the same sort of 11, barring you could maybe pull one out, pull one in, just change the shape a little, but not change the shape, change the sort of personnel for that. And that's why they were super successful. They then sustained a couple of injuries, suspensions, like every sort of club or team goes through, but they managed to sort of weather that better than sort of us and Ayr, in terms of grinding out results and beating those teams when they maybe weren't at their best. So that's credit to them that they've been able to do that throughout the season. But yeah, I was surprised on Tuesday the approach that they had. Don't want to say it made the game easier for us, the way that they played, but we weren't expecting them to have played like that, which I felt maybe a bit of a compliment to us. I guess that they were trying something different to try and beat us. But I felt it was also, I don't want to say it was a free hit for them, but they weren't under huge amounts of pressure that they had to get something. They I feel like it was not maybe an experiment as such, but they thought, right, we'll mix this up, knowing that if they did lose, like you said, they're still 8 points clear albeit we have a game in hand. But with 6-7 games remaining, that it's a pretty good position to be in.
It felt like a must not lose or don't lose rather than must win, where it was the other way round for you guys. And I think that them lining up in the back five, it felt like they were trying to negate the things that Livingston were good at rather than play up to their own strengths.
Yeah, I think so. Again, I think especially the first 2 games we played against them this season was, as much as it was like 50-50, there wasn't that many chances in it. They possibly shaded it, I guess, especially the 0-0 at their ground at the start of the season. I felt like they probably shaded it. If we got beat 1-0, that was probably a fair result. They would have been disappointed that they didn't win the game. We were probably delighted that it was a draw. And then sort of the second game and third game, was a little bit more nothing in it. Again, Teddy scores a great goal, 1-0, and that was it. And then the third one was probably the best one. We got 2 sort of early goals. Stupid defender for Livy gives away a penalty, and they score, and it makes it a bit of a nervy sort of last 30 minutes. But that was probably the best game if you were a neutral watching it. And then, like you said, sort of was 2 different styles or different positions, I guess. It was us, we kind of had to win to last chance saloon almost, and they had that little bit of comfort with basically if they'd beaten us, then that was kind of it wrapped up, really.
Was it you that gave away the penalty in that 2-1 game?
I'll need to check. I'm not 100% sure. Not even sure if it was a penalty, but no. That's the only goal they've scored against us as well. So that's, from a defensive point of view, it was we've been relatively good against them, which is what you want in those big games. Is you don't want to be giving away lots of opportunities, especially against a team that have those kind of players in it.
The third team that's in the title race, although they feel perhaps the most unlikely to win the title, that's Ayr United, your old team, or to give them their proper name, Scott Brown's Ayr United. I mean, just in fact, on that, as a player, how does it feel when a sort of high-profile manager comes into the club and the team is now referred to by the manager's team? Do you get annoyed by that, or is that something just like, that's how the media speaks, that's how fans speak, I don't care about that?
Yeah, it doesn't really. I don't know. Maybe the younger players, the younger players in the league would love to be playing against Scott Brown's team, for example. But having chased them and kicked them for 7 or 8 years, I'm probably delighted that you can't kick me back on the side of the pitch. So again, showing my age, that there's a lot of managers that are in the league that I've either played against or played with. So it is different seeing them on the side of the pitch, and John Rankin trying to shout at players to be calm and composed on the ball. And I remember playing next to him, and he was the total opposite. So it is. There's a lot of good managers, but I think Scott Brown's done a great job for his Ayr United team. I think that they are possibly a little bit more similar to us in terms of their style of play. They do like to try and play out from the back, but they don't probably overplay possibly as much as Falkirk do. But they're probably, a lot of their fans are maybe thinking, what if was it Dowds?
Yes, Anton Dowds. I
think he has scored 20 odd goals in 4 games or something at the start of the season. So that's probably someone that him and Oakley up front would have caused, I think, everyone a lot of problems. But again, Dempsey in the midfield, I really like him as a
good player.
As a player, and again, they're a team that, they will still be thinking that they can easily get second, along with us. And if not, a lot of Livy fans will be Ayr United fans when they play Falkirk, because again, that's what's kind of good. Falkirk still have to go to Somerset Park and play. So from our perspective, we're thinking that's another opportunity. We win our game in hand, it's 5 points. Yeah. We win again, it's 2. Could make it really interesting. But so I think they're a good team. Again, third place. I think they went through a sort of a sticky patch, or they've had a lot of bad injuries, I would say, to key players. I think any squad, especially in the Championship, if you kind of get your key players injured and out for a long spell of time, it is really hard to kind of replace that. And I think that's possibly where they've maybe struggled, or where they'll feel like, not what if, but they could have probably given it a real good crack if they've had those injuries. But again, in saying that, I feel like they've been a really consistent, good team this season.
One of the criticisms that Scott Brown's had is he's chopped and changed goalkeepers a lot over the course of the campaign. I think over the season they've used 5 different goalkeepers, and a lot of fans are questioning like why he's doing this. As a defender, as a centre back, your relationship with the people around you is paramount. What's it like to be in a team when the guy behind you is changing every couple of games?
I'm not sure if I've ever faced that situation. I remember the game Robbie Muirhead scored the last minute free kick. And he came out afterwards and said he thought the keeper should have saved it. I thought that was a little bit harsh. But yeah, he obviously works with them every day. He sees them. It's probably something that maybe on reflection, when he looks back at the end of the season, he maybe feels that's been a wrong decision on his case. Goalies are a different kind of breed. If they make a mistake 9 times out of 10, it leads to a goal. We make hundreds of mistakes and can never amount to anything. You give away a corner really from a mistake, and everyone kind of forgets about it. So he's clearly not 100% confident in any of them. And I think in any sort of walk of life, I guess, if somebody's not 100% confident in you, or everyone's chopping and changing constantly, it does, the goalie, for example, is going into the game thinking, I need to do something to stand out. So he possibly does something that he wouldn't normally do if he was comfortable knowing that, all right, I'm going to try this. Or, I think goalies, and especially young centre backs, they sometimes try and overdo things to stand out. Whereas as you get older, you realize if you just do the simple things and do them really well, that makes you stand out a little bit more. And especially with Ayr, I feel like all of their goalies are in a similar position. They're kind of youngish. They're not really that established. They're probably thinking, Cross comes in there, he's like, I'm going to have to come out here and catch it, and then side volley it out, and everyone will clap and do it. Whereas, if you organised and come out when you need to and stay on your line when you need to, that probably reflects a lot more better than sort of doing the flashy stuff. But yeah, it's something that they're going to have to work out, and I just hope when they play Falkirk that they play their best goalie, and that when they come to Livy they swap and change again.
See, as a centre back, do you have a responsibility to help young goalkeepers through the match? In fact, I'll change that question. How do you communicate with a young goalkeeper and help him through the game when you see he's come for a corner, he might have whiffed it? How do you deal with that and help him develop?
I think a lot of it sometimes on the training pitch. When you're working, set pieces, for example, or certain things, you want a nice early shout. You want it to be commanding, and you want them to be clear instructions. I think sometimes people can confuse talking to, it could just be one word, clear. That's a couple of words, but, just being real right to the point. Keepers, it doesn't have to be man on your right shoulder, man on the left, just little sort of information in terms of what he wants and what he needs. And then, especially for us, I like Jerome to be not outside of his box, but sort of, if a ball goes over the top, I know that if it's over the top of my head that he should probably be getting it, unless it's a really, really good ball. And we've just got that understanding that, I can then try and shepherd away the striker and stop him from that. So playing, again, we're lucky that Jerome's come in and is very good with the ball at his feet, and again, experienced goalkeeper. So, but also, obviously English isn't his first language, so he is very kind of straight to the point, and not lets me and Danny handle it, or me and Michael Nottingham at the start of the season, but he's kind of just like, when you need me, I'll kind of be here, but kind of lets us doing it. And I think a settled back four and goalkeeper definitely does help the team for sure.
Yeah, that's really interesting about the language barrier. That's something. sorry, man. You say that's really interesting about the language barrier. That's something I had never considered before. How do you agree on if the person you're playing with isn't particularly good with English, or likewise you've played all over the world, so you're not speaking their native tongue. How do you agree to how do you communicate with one another, or is it international language of football that transcends all
language
nationalities?
Of love. The language of love. Man on is the same in every language. It's the same in every language, but. Yeah, I remember China was really difficult, trying to tell your centre midfielders left shoulder and right shoulder, and they were just standing still. They didn't even turn around. So I was like, this is going to be a bit more challenging. Whereas at least over here, they half listen to you and do check their shoulders. So yeah, I think, again, just probably getting that understanding and your players is just as important as knowing the opposition players. You should probably always know what foot they're comfortable with, what way they like to turn.
Yeah.
For example, Stephen Kelly likes to drop to the left-hand side of the build-up play. And if he is coming over my side, I know that 9 times out of 10, he's wanting it so he can play it first time with his right foot. Right. Little things like that. I'm not going to then rocket it into him so he has to take 2 touches. You're just kind of weighing it into him so he can play it first time. And again, that's probably coming down to patterns of play or, Pittman, for example, again, I'm just using Livingston, is somebody that doesn't like his back to play. So if he does look like he's on, technically he's maybe showing for it, but he's not as comfortable as maybe a Stephen Kelly, where I'd be more comfortable playing into Stephen Kelly with his back to goal. But I also know if Scott Pittman's coming to him, he's short, the chances is he's going to spin and go in behind. So it's working out those relationships and being able to, a lot of it, you maybe don't have to continually talk about it. Again, Danny Wilson, sometimes it's just a look. Me and him can just give each other a look of when did we play? Wednesday night. There was a lot of times when they were kicking it long that we just gave each other a look of, we'd run or maneuver the striker underneath the ball and the other one would cover it. So you weren't actually having to challenge for it. But if I'm shouting to Danny, push him under the ball and make sure he goes under, everyone understands. There's not that many foreigners, so they would be like, well, I kind of work out what's happening here. So, but Jerome's been better. There's a few times in training that he's asked what a couple of words were that we've been saying, or there's probably words that you don't want repeated on the podcast. Or the gaffer shouted something and he's asked what that is. I'm like, oh, don't worry about it, Jerome. It's just one. Just leave that one. It's not at you. But yeah, he has been really good, and he is a lot more vocal now than he possibly was in the first sort of 5 or 6 games that he played in.
Another one of your old teams, Partick Thistle, they've perhaps had quite a disappointing campaign. I think a lot of people expected them to challenge with Falkirk and Ayr and Livi towards the top of the table. But what do you think has prevented them from having done that?
Again, it's a tricky one because as much as you're in the league, you're only kind of coming up against them 3 or 4 times a season. So you're not getting to watch them unless they're maybe possibly on the Friday night. So, we've played them 3 times, 2 draws and a win. So they are, like I said earlier, everyone's a pretty good team on their day. I probably feel like, again, injuries have maybe hurt them. Obviously, they've changed their manager. They possibly didn't get maybe the players that they wanted to in the summer. And they've probably just not been as consistent. And they probably dropped too many points when, okay, I guess most teams could possibly say that, but I feel they'll probably be in the same boat as maybe Wraith Rovers in terms of, on their day, they'll be frustrated because on their day, they could beat the likes of us, Ayr and Falkirk, which they have done throughout the season, but they've just not been consistent enough to be able to do that week in, week out. So that's probably been where their sort of downfall is, but I still feel like they're a very dangerous team. That's why there is a big importance on finishing second, I guess, is because you don't want to be going head to head with, looks like Thistle at the moment. well, right now, if the league was to stop, it would be Thistle that would be in the playoffs, and that's going to be a real hard two-legged playoff to then go play the second place team. So that's why there's a big emphasis on, if you can't finish first, to try and finish second for sure.
Brian Graham, who is the player, manager and captain as well, looks like a total pain in the arse to play against. What's he like to come up against?
He's not too bad. He is a pain. But no, I did enjoy saying to him when we played him, it's probably time to sub yourself off here after 50 or 60 minutes, which he did smirk at. But it's good that he is a big threat for them. He's very good at what he does. I think he scores all types of different goals. As much as he's a big presence and he's very good in the air, I think his sort of hold-up play and his link-up play is quite underrated. And I think he scored a few goals from outside the box. So he's a very dangerous player at this level, and I think he's done really well for him, for a long time. So he's one that if we do face him in the playoffs, so you have to make sure that you're keeping him quiet.
Is Brian Graham the only man that can possibly manage Brian Graham?
I don't know. Possibly. That's a good question. He's probably. I don't know. I don't know if I'd want to be in that position. I think I'd probably just say that was me hanging the boots up. I don't know, because you don't want to. I think it would just be really hard to manage a team that you're involved in. When does he think I'm going to have to come off here, or I'm not going to start myself at the weekend? Because I think if you're still playing, you want it. You believe, or you should believe that you should be playing every week, and that you'd be playing at a high level. I don't know what is. You obviously have a good relationship with the assistant coach, but even that puts the assistant coach in an awkward position, doesn't it, when he's handing out the teams? But I do think possibly if he gets the job permanently, I'm not sure how much longer he would play. But again, I'm just guessing. I think that's a real tricky one. And he takes the women's team. I don't think there's enough hours in the day for Mr. Brian Graham, for sure.
Just on a completely unrelated note, have you ever been in a situation where the players have got the manager the sack, or you felt as though that there's a mutiny in the dressing room? Have you ever been in that sort of position where you kind of feel like there's maybe senior players, there's groups, there's cliques, it's just not a happy place to be, and ultimately costs the manager his job?
I don't know. It's probably not a good thing, but I have been in that situation a lot of times with managers being sacked.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes it's hard to put your finger on it, because as players, you're never going out there to be like, oh, I don't fancy it today. I'm going to, he loses this one, he's gone. Let's chuck in a couple of goals. It might come across like that, and we might perform and play like that in a certain game, which ends up losing his job. But there's no intention of going out and actually doing that. I think sometimes with the managers that I've had that have been sacked is, they've either gone one way or another. They've stayed with a formation or a group of players and been too loyal to them when they probably should have made changes. But he's just been like, no, I'm sticking with them. And then you just get in that rut and you're a bit low on confidence and you can't get out of it. And, every time there's a ball in the box, they score, and, they're scoring off their heels, or they've turned into Real Madrid and put three past you. Or other times it's like a merry-go-round. Do you know what I mean? I think fans call it, what is it, like the lottery or bingo. Right, he's going to play, there's Ryan McGowan, he's going to play left mid. Here's someone else, and they're just trying everything to try and stumble across some type of winning formation. So I sometimes feel you can kind of tell when managers are possibly not losing it, but they are certainly feeling the pressure when they start doing things that they don't normally do in terms of team selection or sticking with that.
Is that something that players will talk about? Like the managers will go, you mentioned the tombola there, just picking players out of the hat. Is that something you guys talk about afterwards and be like, geez, oh, I mean, I'm like, what am I doing playing left mid here?
It's not normally if you're the one that's playing that position. It's normally somebody else that's like, how's he?
I'm the winger. I'm normally the winger. Why is the centre back taking that place instead?
Yeah. Why is he shuffling the defensive midfielder into the 10 position? When I play 10 position. But again, then the good managers that you play with explain those decisions to the players. It could be a situation of, right, we know that Ryan McGowan as a 10 isn't going to be nutmegging people and passing balls through and causing chaos, but we can use him for his pressing, and we know that they're going to have a lot of the ball. And so if you can kind of work your way and explain those situations, and players understand it a little bit more rather than just being like, what's he actually thinking, and second guessing that. And then there's players or cliques as such, or their car schools that will then be like, he obviously hates me and doesn't like me, and that's the reason I'm not playing is because he said hello to me in the canteen and I didn't say anything back to him. Or you can get real deep and get worked up about why you're not playing, when in reality it's horses for courses. It's he feels like you've not been training well this week. There's a lot of reasonings that I don't believe any manager goes out and picks a team not to win the game or to throw somebody under the bus. But I think the good managers that I've worked with would pull the players that are possibly not playing and feel a bit gutted and explain their reasonings why. Again, a lot of times players have come in and been like, that guy just told me I'm not playing because X, Y, and Z. And then they moan about those reasonings, but at least they have a reason to do it. So, I think that is definitely the best way to approach that. But I guess footballers and players of all clubs, it's when the manager stumbles on a word or says something in his team talk that isn't quite right, there's always a few boys that are like, did you hear that, or did you do that? But I think that's every walk of life, isn't it, when your manager says anything or does. So yeah, we're definitely no different in terms of that. Or if it's a silly press conference or it's a silly interview, it gets fired into the group chat. And I think that applies for players, managers across the world, really.
Do you think Green at Morton can gate crash the top four?
I think they're a really good team. I think they've just got something. Not quite sure what it is, but I think they just know how to stay in the game for as long as possible. They're just like that sort of, especially when we've played them, we've not had a particularly good record against them. I think we've drawn 2-1-1, I think, again. You might check.
Yeah, it's something. He's not got a great record against Morton.
I think we beat them 3-2, and I think we're 3-1 up, and again, there's just like that little annoying brother, they're just always kind of there, and you just can't kind of shut the door on them, especially us this season. So I think we drew 1-1 first game, then we played them there, it was maybe 0-0, which was a horrible game, and then we beat them 3-2, and like I said, again, they've been really close games, and They've got a style of football that they want to play, that they do try and play, but again, maybe similar to us, they do have that option of going a little bit longer and getting up on second balls and just being really well organised and drilled. And sometimes that's half the battle of staying in the game for as long as you can.
Now, what do you make of Dougie Emery's performance as manager? He's been there a number of years. Previously, he was a coach at Livingston under David Martindale, and having met him on A View from the Terrace, good company, but I always got the impression that he needs something to kick against. I think he needs people to write him off and to put him down, and he uses that as motivation to go out there and prove them wrong. What have you made of your interactions with him? Have you had any interactions with him?
No, he's having played against him, he was a really angry winger, and now he's just even angrier on the sidelines. I just remember when we played down at Morton, and obviously our gaffer and their gaffer, they're super close together, and it was just like, was just the abuse that was getting, well, all the shouts, and there's just two guys just on the side of the pitch just screaming the whole game. But, you know, again, it just shows you that they're so into it, and they just want you to do well, and they're kicking every ball with you. So, you know, they're both very passionate about their club and their players, and getting the best out of it. And I think he's done a wonderful job, you know, for them to be in that position, you know, considering, again, some of the so-called bigger clubs in the league and where they find themselves. I think he's done a really, really good job, and I find his team's really difficult to play against, which is a compliment, I guess.
Capello, a good place to play?
Yeah, it's all right. Everyone gives it a bad deal. I think it's just like, not everyone can have big fancy 60,000 seater stadiums. You know, you try, and if it's your home, you try and make it as homely as you can, and hope that the away team hates it. It's part of football. It happens everywhere in the world. So yeah, I have no problems. I like the terracing. I like that. I like that they're kind of close to it. I really like that Morton fans are Morton fans. You know, it's so easy for them to go and support other ones. I have just like real respect for them being like Morton through and through. And, you know, it's always been a good crowd anytime we've went down there. You know, I've been down as a supporter. I'm trying to think. It was maybe Hearts in the cup game. Good away day.
Oh, yeah.
It was a relatively good away day with the pubs close by. So, yeah, I think, you know, everyone that kind of goes there knows what's to be expected, and enjoys that side of it. You know, you probably enjoy going down to those types of stadiums and grounds as a fan than, you know, maybe Celtic or Rangers, or, you know, those kinds of beautiful stadiums. But you're a bit like, yeah, what's the point?
Yeah, no, I went to Capello for the first time earlier in the season. I had a really nice time there. But we'll move on and talk about Wraith Rovers. They're perhaps another disappointment this season, because having finished runners-up last year, in fact, having got to the playoff finals against Ross County, they seem quite far off the pace this season. How would you have rated their campaign so far?
I think they'll be disappointed to like you said, to be in the position that they would have been in. They would have been one of the clubs, I reckon, at the start of the season that felt that they could win the league or be there or thereabouts come the end of the season. I think changing the manager on reflection's probably something that they had their time back, they maybe wouldn't have done.
This is Ian Murray you're talking about, not Neil Collins.
Talking about they've had three managers in one season, which isn't great for anyone. You know, whether that be they feel like they should have got rid of Murray when they did, albeit that's great. Then you need to make sure your next appointment is spot on the money. You know, that's sometimes outside of the players' pay grade. You know, that's more of a board decision and reflection on those guys for bringing that type of manager in. But yeah, you know, again, from the outside looking in, we've had really difficult games against them. Albeit, I think we scored we played them 3 times. Am I correct? 4.
I think so. I should have had all this written down.
Should have had all this done.
Yeah, sorry, mate. I should have had all this written down before I came.
Even though I've played in all of those games, I should probably. Look, first game, first game we won 1-0, last minute goal, nothing between the teams. We won. Second game we won 2-1, again last minute goal, nothing between the teams. Third time we got beat. They probably shaded it, to be honest. They were 2-0 up. They played quite well. We scored, made it a bit nervy last 20 minutes, but probably fair result on reflection. And then we played them a couple of weeks ago, and it was 0-0. So yeah, like I said, again, there wasn't too much between the teams. They probably feel, again, consistency. They've just not been able to consistently grind out results, but they've got some really good players, good experience throughout their team. And yeah, there'll be ones, you know, come next year, they'll be hoping that they have a good summer, good recruitment, have a little bit more stability probably outside of the playing group, and be able to have a real push at it next year.
Wraith Rovers' home form is pretty good, but their away form is bad. I mean, how do you explain how teams can have good home form and bad away form in the Championship? It's not like you're travelling massive distances, and it's not like you're going to any real cauldrons. It's not like you're going to Galatasaray or anywhere like that to play. How would you put your finger on something like that?
Yeah, I don't know, because as a player, it doesn't really make that much of a difference. I don't know if it's just me. There might be other boys that totally hate playing away from home, or they have a better feeling of their sort of home surroundings, I guess, or are more comfortable. Yeah, I don't know. It's probably, again, reflection on the league. I think when you're at home, near enough every team, when they're at home, probably thinks they're going to win the game.
Mm-hmm.
And it's how you handle that. Sometimes, again, not having watched them every week, but it's how they maybe are off the ball. When they're not, they don't have, possibly at home. Most home teams have more possession than the away team, so it's how you are off the ball which matters for most part of the game. So that's maybe something that they need to look at. Are they defensively, or their press structure? Is it different when they're away from home? But yeah, like I said, they've got some dangerous players. I think, again, not talking about individuals, but Dylan Easton's a player that could easily,
very good player.
A very clever player, and Finlay Pollock from Hearts has done well when he's been moved up front. Good, strong, like back four or back three that they've been regularly playing in. Paul Hanlon has got 900 games for Hibs. Lewis Stevenson, they've got some good quality players in that team, but have maybe struggled with a couple of injuries to a couple of players all at the same time, and that's kind of dampened them a little bit. And but yeah, I think they've obviously beaten us. They've beaten Falkirk, so that's, again, teams that they're probably thinking on our day when everything clicks, we should definitely probably be higher than where we are.
Barry Robson said he listens to the High Performance podcast. Is that a red flag?
I don't know what that podcast is, so it's probably possible.
It's Jake Humphrey that does it. It's all about mindset and sort of. If you've not listened to it, then we won't dwell on it. But it's a red flag for me. If somebody came up to me and said, "Have you listened to the latest High Performance podcast? It's really good," I would slowly walk away from them.
Yeah. I think if you're a manager and you're telling your players to listen to a podcast.
Oh, I don't think he was telling them to. I just think he mentioned it in an interview that he listened to, and that was a bit of a red flag. He also said that he's into military strategy and stuff like that. So, can you bring the Battle of Austerlitz into the Scottish Championship? We'll find out once Barry Robson's able to sign his own players. But we'll talk about Queen's Park now, and this is a good chance to preview the game on Sunday, the SPFL Trust Trophy final. So far over the course of the season, Ryan, Livingston don't have a particularly good record against Queen's Park. I think it's 2 draws and a defeat.
Yep.
What are you expecting from this game?
Hopefully a change of result. Yeah, we've just, possibly similar to Falkirk against us, we've just struggled. We've just struggled to sort of break them down. I think it was 1-1 the first game, 1-1 the second, and then we got beat 2-1 at Hampden, I think it was. So yeah, it was on reflection for us as a team, we probably feel we've not played particularly well against them for whatever reason. Probably can't put our finger on it. It's not something that possibly that they do as such. It's maybe we've just been off it when we have played them. But yeah, Zach Riding up front's a real handful. As a centre back, he's just constantly been a pain in the backside in terms of running in behind, and Sean Welsh in the midfield is clever and knows how to do it, and they've just got a kind of bit of a solid team, I guess, and just kind of, again, one of those teams that seem to hang into games and are well organised and drilled. But yeah, hoping that we play them Sunday in the final, and then the following Saturday in the league. So
right, wow,
with Dunfermline in the middle of that, so it's a big week for us as a club. to try and go out there and get 3 wins and see where that sets us up. But we're under no illusions of how difficult it is to play against them, especially, as our record shows.
I've got my ticket all booked for the SPFL Trust Trophy final, so that's 2 Livingston games in the space of a week. It's not many people that can. It's not many people outside of Livingston supporters can say that they're excited to watch them twice in the week. But here we are. That's the passion for lower league football does for you. But Callum Davidson lost his job there. I mean, he recorded not just like a once in a lifetime result, but a once in history result by beating Rangers in the Scottish Cup at Ibrox. Took the team to the SPFL Trust Trophy final. League form wasn't great though. They were challenging towards the top 4 at points, but they've fallen away now, and I think they're perhaps looking over the shoulder at Dunfermline and Hamilton. Do you think it was harsh to have got rid of Davidson?
Personally, I have a bit of a connection with Davidson from
of course,
St Johnstone days. So yeah, I feel like it was harsh. It was a shock, I guess, when I did hear that he had been sacked. That there is certain clubs or managers where after a result, I think everyone thinks, I wouldn't be surprised if if a manager goes, for example. But again, I think that kind of comes down to the club and the board. What are they actually wanting Queen's Park to be? Is probably the question that you'd want to be asking. Are they wanting to be a top 4 club? Are they wanting to be a playoff club? If so, then I would imagine they'd have to improve their budget. They'd have to invest in the playing group to try and compete with the 4 or 5, 6 clubs that are in that league. But yeah, like you said, they're in the Trust Trophy final, which is sort of the best of the rest trophy in terms of everybody outside of the Premier League. It's not easy to get to. They beat Rangers at Ibrox, albeit everyone was beating Rangers at Ibrox in that spell, but it's still a huge result.
The way you're downplaying it there. Yeah, everyone was beating them. It's not that special.
I did text them that, being like, well, it's not as if it's a big thing, but yeah, it's a huge result. Yeah. Gets them into the quarterfinals of the Scottish Cup, which I don't think they'd been in there for, over 100 years or something. So, yeah. And again, they're probably in and around the position that their budget and they possibly expected to be at, albeit they would probably want to be a bit closer or within touching distance, possibly in a position where Morton are at the moment in terms of, we can get a bit of a run and we can hopefully try and make a bit more of a chase on it. But I think possibly, if they finish comfortably where they finish in, they win the Trust Trophy, quarterfinal of the Scottish Cup, I think probably on reflection, that's a pretty good season for them. But yeah, you have to speak to the owners and the directors on where they want to put the club and where they want to go.
Yeah, that's very interesting. You said I was going to ask about whether or not the club have got an identity crisis, as whether you want to be a proper championship club that is looking to get promoted, or did you want to be a finishing school where you take all these young boys on loan from Rangers and Celtic, or you sign guys from who have been released by academies in England and try to polish them up into rough diamonds, or polish the rough diamonds and sell them on. Yeah. And I think that you can maybe do both, but you need to have the experienced players there to help them along. And I think guys just like having like Sean Welsh and Cammy Kerr, you need more around that to help it. You can't just have 2 or 3 players.
And then I think they sold Dom Thomas in January. Yeah. I think they sold one of the younger boys down south. So Alex Bannon went in the summer. Callan McKenna had gone in the summer as well. Yeah. If you are sort of telling your manager that you want to bring in young players and then sell them, then there's going to be a sort of grace period. It's not just a belt of right. Well, here's our next one ready to go. It does take time to develop those players and to get them into that type of position where people are then wanting to spend money on them. So. And again, when you do play younger players, they're possibly not as consistent as a few senior players. That's kind of what you get, I guess, from experienced players or players that have played 50, 100, 200 games, is that they have seen a lot of those situations arising and know how to handle that, whereas the young players are still developing, that they still need to make mistakes. I always say that to younger players. you can have 10 great games, but the one bad game, you probably learn a lot more about yourself and what you did than the 10 good ones you had beforehand. So, they need to experience those games, but also be in an environment where they're allowed to experience it without, being pulled out of the team and never to be seen again.
You've played at Hampden at his very best. Of course, you won the 2012 Scottish Cup with Heart of Midlothian, beating Hibernian 5-1 and scoring as well in that match. You've also played at Hampden in front of about 2,000 supporters. What's it like to play Queen's Park at Hampden? Is it fun to play? I mean, you get to play the National Stadium, but it's been a percentage of the capacity.
Yeah, I probably preferred the game. We played them at Lesser Hampden at the start of the season, and the pitch was
it's immaculate.
It was very good.
Listen to me saying the pitch is immaculate. I mean, like I've played in it, I've seen it. It looks in amazing condition.
It was really enjoyable to play on. For us cloggers at Livingston, we could just clog it all up. No, but it was really good. Again, it was like a small stand as such, and it was full, which us footballers are quite simple. You just think, there's a lot of people here, whereas there's probably the same amount as there was at Hampden. But yeah, it's cool for, I think, the younger players that have never possibly played at Hampden to see the changing rooms, tunnel, all the kind of stuff that you've seen on TV. But yeah, it is very different to playing in a full Hampden, that's for sure.
Well, it was full for about, certainly till about half an hour to go when all the Hibs fans. Yeah, when everyone from the away end started disappearing. But we'll talk about Hamilton Academical, and this is where we get a chance to focus on your brother Dylan, the good-looking one from the two of you. How's he enjoying his season at Accies?
It's been a difficult season for the club. I think they've been, again, probably be one of those clubs that haven't been consistent enough. I think they've kind of struggled in terms of just getting results. We have a relatively good record against them, but I think they've just not been consistent enough throughout the season. I think there's been a lot of injuries to a lot of their players. And they've just not really handled the season well at all. They've got Ollie Shaw up front, who's scored, I think, maybe 10 or 12 goals, which should probably be enough to put them in a position higher than what they are in. Yeah, there seems to be something that is not quite clicking at the minute. They're possibly not lucky, I guess, because you don't get any create your own luck, I guess, but that Airdrie are sort of so far off it that there's not that real pressure from below as such in terms of them trying to catch them.
Yeah, when I look through that Hamilton team, I look at the players and think there's some good players in their team, but they just feel lesser than the sum of their parts. And I think when you chuck in the fact that there appears to be a very large disconnect between the supporters, the manager, the board, it doesn't seem like a particularly positive environment to be in at the moment.
Yeah, I think that probably shows in terms of their results and the performances. Again, looking in from a distance, it does seem like that. In terms of, there's a lot of sort of off-field issues that seem to be any kind of little mistakes. I guess the fans' frustration then turns onto the players, and the players are then frustrated at the fans, and it's just it doesn't seem to be a particularly happy place at the minute. But one that they're going to have to be careful that they don't get sucked into those kind of playoff positions, because as much as the position that Livi are in, we want to go up through the playoffs. There's every chance that when you are in those playoffs that you can go straight back down.
And trying to battle them to avoid finishing ninth place Dunfermline Athletic. And I suppose that Dunfermline, the discussion around them has really been dominated by two managerial appointments. One who probably go down as one of the worst appointments that we've seen in recent years. And then they've replaced him with someone who could be the most box office managerial appointment we've seen in recent years, with Neil Lennon coming in. But before we focus on Lennon, we'll start with Michael Tidser. He was there 59 days as manager, came in, oversaw 11 games, won 3 of them. The other 8 games he didn't actually even score a goal. And how would you rate his time in charge of the Pars?
I think that's totally on the board.
Yeah, me too.
I think, again, without knowing all of the ins and outs and the details, but just looking at it from a distance, you don't go and pay money for a manager who plays a certain way and a certain style. Bring in players to kind of suit that style in January, give them a couple more games, and then sack them, after, like you said, 59 days. I think that's quite poor in terms of that. It's not as if he came in and played a style or played differently to what they would have imagined he would have. So yeah, I think, we played him in the semi-final of the Trust Trophy, and there was a clear difference in terms of how they were wanting to play from when we had played him earlier on in the season. But you could see that they were trying something different, and that it wasn't going to be the finished article in the next couple of games. And then we drew with them at home. Again, they did well, but we probably felt that we were a little bit off it. But all credit to them; they were well organised. They were well drilled. It was 0-0, so they obviously didn't have score any goals. But I think that they probably just don't have the patience, or they were possibly getting worried about Hamilton and Airdrie and getting sucked into those playoffs, and then it is a bit of a lottery. When you are in the playoffs, you don't want your kind of whole season or club wanting to be in that position. So again, they felt that they had to make that decision. But I feel like when you bring in a manager and he plays the way that his team played at Kelty, and you could see the success that he was having there, albeit they weren't his players, you do need to allow some time for that to happen. And I just feel really bad on Tidser. I feel like yes, he probably could have done better, or they could have done some results, but I think his end goal was the right goal that they were trying to get to. And yeah, and then they went and got Neil Lennon. So it's, I don't know how the selection process has worked that one out, or the sort of club, to go from young, exciting Tidser coach. It does scream a little bit of a panic buy, and just to try and get somebody in to steady the ship, and then obviously get to the summer and see where they go from there.
Very much agree with that. I think that Tidser probably didn't really come across well in his post-match interviews. I think some of the comments that he made upset fans, and maybe alienated some players. I think he made comments after the game when Hamilton beat them 1-0, sort of distancing himself from them, saying that, we give them all the instructions in training, they don't necessarily carry them out. But even so, I think it doesn't reflect well on Dunfermline. And I think in time Tidser can go and find work again, because his Kelty team were entertaining to watch. So it doesn't reflect well on him, and I hope he bounces back. But Neil Lennon, until the end of the season, what are you expecting from him and from Victor Wanyama, who's joined the club earlier in the week?
Yeah, that was, I don't think anyone's seen that one coming, did they? In terms of Lennon and Wanyama, I guess. But yeah, I think he would just be in there to try and make them difficult to beat. He will know how to. He obviously knows how to set up a team and get a result, and that's what he'll be. That's who will no doubt be his job description between now and the end of the season, is to be hard to play against, to be competitive, to be in the game, and yeah, it's going to be an interesting one to play him on. We play him Wednesday night, so yeah, it's a busy schedule for us: Sunday, Wednesday, Saturday. So it's it's going to be a good game. One that we're looking forward to, and it will be interesting to see what they do change in terms of we've now played Dunfermline 5 or 6 times, because we had them in the League Cup campaign under 3 different managers, so it'd be good to see So we obviously had McPake at the start of the year. Then we played Tidser, 2 games with Tidser, and then we'll have obviously 1 game with Lennon. So it'll be interesting to see how all 3 managers get on.
I'm thinking, will I go along to that? But then, no, you can't go to 3 Livingston games.
3 in a week. I'll get your season ticket. You'll be a season ticket holder next year.
You can't do that. I mean, in terms of Ryan, you've mentioned about like Ange Postecoglou in the past being able to bring the best out of you, and I think that with Lennon, the impression you get from Lennon is that he can look at specific things from players and bring the best out of them. For you as a player, what does a manager need to do to see the best version of Ryan McGowan?
Oh, a few extra days off here and there don't go amiss. I think everyone's different. I think that you just want somebody that. I guess with Ange, I always just felt that Ange knew what I could do. He never asked me to do anything that I couldn't do. So I was really comfortable with what he asked me to do because, I guess in a similar way to Jim Jeffries, for an example, they were just like, right back, we want you solid as a back 4. Our left back's a little bit more attacking minded, so we'll probably go down the left hand side more. You need to make sure you're covered across, defend your back post, 1v1 situations, make sure you're stopping crosses in, and just be solid as defensively, Perfect. Can back in my younger days, I could tick all of those boxes and get up and down. Jim Jeffries used to just say, give Temps or Rudy Scatch the ball, you run around the outside, drag a couple of defenders. They won't know that we're not going to pass you the ball, but they will take some players away from you. We'll take some players away from the good players and we can go create some opportunities. So yeah, again, similar to Ange, he's like overlap, attack when you can, but he was more, he wasn't telling me to invert into centre mid and to, switch the ball out wide and take 2 touches and play balls in behind. So he just gave me that confidence of, again, he's seen me since I was a kid. He's like, I've seen you do this a million times. I'm not asking you to do anything that I know you're not capable of. So I think Lennon will just probably do that with Dunfermline, sort of scrape it right back down to basics, get his defenders to defend, his midfielders to get up on second balls and be aggressive. Probably big Chris Kane up front, winning his headers and flick-ons, McCann out wide, running in behind. He would just probably simplify it all and try and get a tune out of them that way.
Brilliant. And so they wouldn't ask you to play left mid then? You wouldn't get Ange Postecoglou or Jim Jeffries asking you to fill in the wing?
If Ange Postecoglou ever asked me to play any position other than centre-back or right-back, I think he would be in a world of trouble.
We'll finish up by talking about Airdrieonians, and for a while they looked completely dead and buried, but since about mid-January they put together a pretty good run of results in the circumstances, and they've dragged themselves to within a fighting chance of finishing in safety. Do you think Airdrieonians can avoid finishing in 10th place?
I think they've got a chance. Yeah, like you said, I find them difficult to play against. I think they play really good football. Yeah, I've really, I don't want to say enjoyed playing against them because they are a difficult team to play against, but I feel they've been better the second half of the season because they've maybe not been that total football as they were maybe at the start of the season. They've just got that difference in their game, and I think that makes it makes a huge difference to when you're playing against them, because I felt earlier on in the season you could just all out press because you knew they weren't going to go long. They were never going to flip it in behind you. So you could be, your centre midfielders, your centre backs, everyone could be up on the halfway line knowing that if you won the ball, you're obviously right on top of them. Whereas they've kind of been able to switch that. I don't know if it's personnel or injuries. And they've just been able to, all it takes is 1 or 2 balls over the top. And I'm not talking, boots up the pitch. I'm talking a long pass over the top. And then everyone's a bit like, oh, okay, that's just caught us out. And it's just human nature to take 4 or 5 yards off it. Everyone moves back. Then it allows you to build the game a little bit more comfortably and get sort of up the pitch and get sustained pressure or possession in the opposition third. So I feel like they've probably adapted their game a little bit more, and that's probably why they're getting a few more results. And again, it's a young squad who, it is hard for young players when they're coming into the team and maybe make mistakes and it's costing them goals and costing them victories, to then go out the following week and be 100% comfortable and confident in doing what they're doing when the previous week they're continually getting beat. So I think a couple of results. I believe that they've always thought we're only a couple of results away from the players believing in what we're doing and getting the confidence of doing that. It was just unfortunate that they had such a bad start to the season that they couldn't kind of get that confidence. And I think it shows since January when they have been able to get a few wins and a few draws and a few positive performances, that you can start kind of seeing them kind of be the team that, Reece McKay probably hoped that they would be from the start of the season. So again, they're giving themselves every opportunity, Like we said, the previous two clubs, Dunfermline and Hamilton, as much as they're kind of battling it out from the playoffs, they'll also be checking their injury results every Saturday night, hoping that they've not won, just to put that little bit more pressure on them.
Finally, I'm going to ask you for your league predictions as we go into these final 7 games. Who's winning the league?
I would have to say Livingston will win the league, but the Falkirk are in a very good position to do that as we speak.
Promotion playoffs?
Livingston or Falkirk.
What about the other two teams?
Ayr United and I think Thistle. I think Thistle will have enough to be fourth.
Relegation playoffs?
Playoffs, I think it'll be Hamilton.
Do you think they'll go down?
I don't think they'll go down. I think they'll beat whoever comes up, whoever plays and whoever they play against in that playoff.
And who's getting relegated then?
I do think Airdrie's left it that little bit too late, but I think it'll be very close. I think come the last 2 weeks, those 2, possibly 3 teams will be very, very close.
Yeah, definitely. It's been a really exciting division this season at both ends of the table compared to some other leagues where it's been a foregone conclusion. This one really has gone down to the wire. So it's been amazing, Ryan, to get the chance to talk to you about it. You've been very generous with your time. I wish you good luck for the remainder of the campaign, and I look forward to seeing you again on Sunday and possibly Wednesday.
No worries, it's been a pleasure. Thank you very much.
And this is just a polite reminder to subscribe to our Patreon. For as little as £2 a month, you can get access to tons of bonus content covering every single inch of Scottish football. We are the best in the business, so do get involved. Patreon.com/Terrace Podcast. We will be back again soon with more 10 out of 10 content. And if you're going to a game at the weekend, enjoy yourself. But unlike the Falkirk fans who were shouting at Ryan McGowan because he took a wee bit too long to get back up and running at the end of Tuesday night's match, please do so respectfully. That's all we can ask. Thank you very much. Take care. God bless.